Okay, we are live.
Hello. Oh, we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to AI and Legal Tech Virtual Summit. Good morning, everyone. We're very excited to have you here, and this is proudly hosted by Techsommet. So, welcome to the program. I'm Cara Peterson, co-founder of Describe.ai, and I'm truly honored to be your moderator for today's exciting conversation. Legal tech is always an interesting space to dive into, and today there's even some big news out in the legal tech world. So who knows? Maybe we'll get into that. So just a little bit about me before we dive into the discussion. My background sits at the intersection of technology, business, and social impact. And like many of you, I've spent my career focused on how we can use innovation to solve real world challenges. I was actually in public health for a long time, public health communications. And so I'm kind of interested in big system-wide issues and problems that we can address with technology, and certainly justice, access to justice, and creating more legal services out there, and legal information is fits in that space. So just quickly, a little bit about what we're doing at Describe, in case you haven't heard of us. So we've built an AI-powered legal research platform that's designed to make U.S. case law more accessible and affordable, not just for large firms or big law, but for smaller practices, solo attorneys, advocates, pro se litigants, legal aid societies, and members of the public working to navigate the legal system. Our mission is to break down barriers and make legal information easier to search, understand, and apply, because we believe the law should be accessible to everyone, not just those with the deepest resources. My own journey, I'm not an attorney, I should let you know that, although here I am moderating a legal tech panel, which is kind of interesting. But my own journey into legal tech wasn't something I planned at all. As I mentioned, I'm in communications, I mostly worked in higher education. But it began with a personal legal challenge during the pandemic, which was related to some employment law situations. And it definitely opened my eyes to how difficult, costly, and intimidating the legal system can be if you're not brought up in that space or know much about it. Even for people with a lot of privilege and friends that are lawyers, education, and what you would think is a lot of resources. So that experience led me to co-found Describe.ai with my colleague and husband, co-founder Richard DeBona, with the goal of using AI to help bridge the access to justice gap and provide better tools for legal research and understanding. Is one little company going to solve it? No way, but we could help add to the solutions is the hope. So what excites me most about this space and about moderating today's summit is the opportunity that AI gives us to reimagine what's possible in legal work. But we're going to unlock, if we're going to unlock AI's full potential, we need to stay focused on the people behind the work, the lawyers, the legal operations teams, business partners, and ultimately, of course, the clients and communities everyone is working so hard to serve. So AI can help us work smarter and more efficiently, but it can't replace critical thinking, good judgment, empathy, or ethical decision making. That's for sure. Those human qualities are more important than ever. So in today's summit is all about exploring that balance, looking at the real world transformation AI is driving within legal departments. We'll hear from legal innovators and industry leaders who are moving from theory to practice, covering everything from risk and governance to implementation and scale. Today, you'll gain insight into a few things and probably some that I haven't thought of yet. So, definitely on the list, though, is how AI is being integrated into in house legal workflows. Super important and very interesting. Best practices for managing AI policy and compliance, which again, I won't speak to because, again, I'm not an attorney, but I'm very excited to learn from our wonderful panelists. And also how teams are moving from pilot projects to enterprise wide adoption. We've been talking about AI in legal for a couple of years now, and sort of the progress is being made in fits and starts, right? So it'll be interesting to see notes from the field on how this is going in the real world. Just a quick note for all attendees. We want today to be as interactive as humanly possible. Please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to share your thoughts or ask our speakers questions throughout the sessions. Each session will have a little Q&A at the end, so I will be monitoring those and making sure we surface questions for the panelists and the presenters as we go along. And finally, I have to say a huge, huge thank you to Metro Tech, Mitratech. I have to say that, pronounce that correctly. Mitratech, our platinum sponsor for supporting today's discussion and helping make this summit possible. So let's get started. Off to our first speaker. So, sorry, no, that's a transition to myself. Hello, it's me again. We're excited to kick things off with a fireside chat that couldn't be more timely or more human. Our first session is titled "Why AI Needs Us." Interesting. Elevating our role as humans. I kind of love it that we're starting a talk on AI by talking about people. That's really cool. As legal teams increasingly turn to AI to automate routine tasks, this conversation asks an essential question. How do we ensure that the human element not only remains but thrives? This is so timely. This isn't a traditional presentation. It's a candid, insightful discussion between two accomplished legal leaders who both bring strategy and empathy to the conversation. They'll explore how legal teams can build AI ecosystems that don't just prioritize tools, right, which is what we hear about a lot, is how things work and efficiencies, but they'll unpack the soft skills that empower talent, skills like critical thinking, communication, and ethical judgment that are becoming more, not less, essential in this new era. We'll also hear their take on why AI alone can't solve the challenges of a fragmented legal function and what it really means to evolve legal roles without replacing the people behind them. Please join me in welcoming our wonderful panelists, Elizabeth Logonis, VP Professional Services at Metratech, and Soumya Kaushik, Associate General Counsel Legal, of course, at Metratech as well, to the virtual stage as they explore what it means to be truly human in the age of AI. Let's dive in. Off to you.
Thanks, Kara. And I know like you saw how like AI needs us, right? And you took an intellectual pause there. And I would say, well, AI didn't just appear one day, right? Humans were involved in designing it and are critical in ensuring its evolution in a way that is going to continue to enable the human goodness that we have. But first, I'm going to allow Soumya to introduce herself and why she's here. Soumya?
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Really honored to be amongst all of the esteemed panels, and of course, my colleague Liz, who feel like we talk about the things we're going to talk about today on a daily basis. You know, as friends, we talk about it. So we're very passionate and happy to be here. I'm Soumya. I'm Associate General Counsel at Mitratech. I oversee our AI program as well as our overall digital transformation. And I'd like to bring legal as a business partner to the table. Oftentimes, legal is seen as the yes or no, or mostly the Department of No in many cases. And so I've been the champion for the legal team to really dive into AI and all things technology and innovation and see how we can use it thoughtfully, purposefully, and strategically. So I'm happy to be here with Mitratech. And prior to joining Mitratech, I was in private practice where I did commercial and IP litigation. I had my own firm at one point in New York. And I also am a founder of a legal tech company called Eskme that was started in 2011. And so it was in the early days of the legal tech boom. So I've been in the legal tech space for quite a bit now, and I'm passionate about it, and I'm happy to bring some insights both from the legal side and the business side.
Thank you, Samya. And a little background into myself. So I'm Liz Lagones, and as you can see here, I am at Mitratech. But prior to that, my entire career has been in-house legal operations leadership and chief of staff to general counsels across many industries, places like Citigroup, MetLife, BD, WeWork. Also did some years in legal operations consulting at up-level ops. So I had a front row seat at being a part of or guiding many legal departments and legal leadership through transformation, whether big or small, where technology was a part of that transformation. And I say that very specifically, it was a part of, it was not the the full game and the full show, the human aspect of this was really critical and continues to be really critical. Whether you're implementing a document management tool or trying to find a way on how to make AI a part of your everyday, the human element is really important. And Samia and I can talk about it all day, every day. So let's dive into what you're going to hear from us today. Why is it that AI can't replace us? And is that fear a valid fear that we're having? How is it reshaping the practice of law, the individual roles of those practitioners within the business of law? AI applications today and tomorrow, where can it go? Like, kind of curious to hear from folks in the audience around your thoughts around all of this and the lasting value of our soft skills. And listen, put in questions as we go throughout. We'll try our best to answer them as we go through this chat, but also we'll leave some time at the end. So we used AI to say, give us an image around this fight between AI and humans, and it gave us this image, and it's why it's not a fight; it's really a partnership. And what really touched me here is that the robot is gracefully putting its hand on top of the legal professional here, as to say, I'm not here to fight you, right? I'm here to partner with you. I think it's a real powerful image. Samia, let's start with this conversation. Why do you have the belief that this is not a fight where we're going to be replaced by AI, but it's a totally different conversation?
I think, I'm a proponent of bringing in innovation early on so that you can get adjusted versus having the technology and innovation continue to move forward and then joining in at a later time where you have a steeper learning curve. So, I think it is AI and generative AI now is moving very fast, and it is totally a natural to have a bit of a fear of where that's going to go when it moves so fast, and you don't feel sometimes that even today will look like tomorrow. And so it's natural to have a fear. And I want to just take a few steps back actually and talk about when I started a legal tech company in 2010, 2011. AI wasn't so much. AI was around, of course, but not in the same capacity as it is today. And it wasn't surely was not in the legal landscape. But starting a legal tech back then, a legal tech company back then had its own challenges too. I was trying to push forward a new way of practicing law that was collaborative, that was innovative, that was sharing documents among legal professionals to make their jobs easier, more efficient, and effective. But, the largest challenge I had at that time was, again, fear of adopting a new way of practicing law. There was fear and resistance from wondering if their work product wasn't going to be as prized and esteemed, and it wasn't going to be there as it was going to be shared now. There was this competitive nature that folks did not want to change, and I understand that to some degree. But pushing a new way of practicing law was hard back then, and we didn't have AI, and things were not moving as fast. We had some introduction of blockchain and cryptocurrency in the legal space, and that surely caused a lot of trepidation for the legal landscape. And now we're here and we have AI. So it's not just AI that's causing this fear or this concern for our position and our place in the legal profession. It's been there with every change in technology and innovation, and we've seen it for decades now. I think it also even happened when e-discovery took on a very large role in the discovery and litigation landscape. So it's not novel that we're here, and it's a little nerve-wracking. I think the difference is this is moving very fast, and there's a lot of pressure to adopt AI and technology. And if you haven't, then many companies are starting to feel that they're falling way behind. But I will say that if we remove the fear and we start to realize that technology is not actually here to take over our jobs entirely, because we cannot, as legal professionals, be entirely removed. There is a psychological and soft skill component that technology, robots, AI, they're not going to be able to completely solve and take over. So I know that it's a natural tendency to fear a bit of change and uncertainty, but I know we've been here before, and I'm a real proponent of adopting early, understanding it, and being very purposeful. You don't need to boil the ocean with technology. You can use it in small areas and start seeing how they enhance your life, enhance your practice, instead of worrying that it's going to just all of a sudden take it over.
That's great, Samya. And there's so many good points there that I'm like struggling right now to go, where do we start? But I think I'm going to go here at the beginning as to how lawyers become lawyers to begin with, and how that follows them through their practice. And I'm going to say that I feel like that hasn't kept up with the change that is happening in the environment, and it has nothing to do with like AI becoming as powerful and, as I'm going to say, human-like as it is today. It's been the case since we're e-billing and document management, and you think about contract lifecycle management tools, you think about practicing law using Zoom, right? And look at us here today, that when you are becoming a legal professional, whether you're a lawyer or a paralegal, whatever your role is, right? A patent agent or what have you, you're taught in a very specific way that doesn't necessarily incorporate a lot of use of technology and how that could enable your practice. When you go into a law firm, right? Maybe this is changing today for some, but you're given like mountains of documents, whether they were virtual or, literally sitting in a room. And so, what has the industry done, and what could it be doing to be redefining what it means to be trained to work in the legal profession? And how does that, how do you give value and safety to those professionals, coming up and currently within the industry that are seeing all of this change? Because it's human nature to go into protection mode and try to keep things in a way that it manages the risk in a way that they know it. So how do you help people through that change in what is an unknown space for them?
Yeah, it's a great question and a great thought. I'll start with two examples. I teach a law school class, contracts drafting and negotiation. And when AI took the legal space by storm, maybe a couple years ago, 2 years ago, there was a lot of concern at the school and amongst the academic space of how do we ensure that the students are still going to learn and develop the legal skills that are required for a successful practice of law, no matter where and what industry you're in. And I gave it a lot of thought as to what I would change in my syllabus for the contract drafting and negotiation. And I thought that instead of outright prohibiting any kind of AI tool or technology in the drafting class and negotiation class, I wanted to really incorporate it into the syllabus. And it was important for me to figure out the best way to have the students understand that this is a tool. This is not to be replaced. This is not to replace your skills and your critical thinking and your analysis skills. This is a starting point. And so what I did actually was, the first assignment is to go to any legal tool or chat GPT or whatever you may choose and ask it to create a certain contract. And then I had them go through a live scenario where they would negotiate two different sides of a deal. And we would have so many insightful moments where they would see the contract that was written by a legal tool without any a human element added to it. And we would negotiate, and we would see so many loopholes in the negotiation. We would say, well, that's not been defined, or I don't understand, or that wasn't the intent of what I wanted to get into this contract. So there were so many. It was such a great exercise for the students to first come into the class and realize, oh, wait, this is great, but this is not even close at some point to what a real contract should be looking like, because they haven't added the critical element of foreseeing 10 steps ahead, how this is going to unfold in real life. How is this going to be a problem in the future? Where is the suspected breach that's most likely going to happen? It's usually not in the obvious places. So you need critical thinking and you need some experience to figure out this is where this is going to fall apart because we haven't done X, Y, and Z. So the students were able to go through the exercise and they realized very early on in the class, almost week 2, okay, we're not going to go ahead and use these tools and then submit our midterm paper because it has so many it has so many holes and so many flaws as is. So that was a real good experience for them to realize that the human element can never be replaced. And in fact, it's a good starting point for them. The tools are going to get better. They already have since then, but it's never going to replace the ability to think. And it's also never going to be able to replace the ability to foresee and predict, which we can do when we have fragmented information. We don't have all the information as lawyers. And that's part of our job.
It is part of our job. And what you described there,
To choose.
sorry.
We get to choose risk. Sorry, I thought maybe I lost you.
I
I
think
thought I
there was
lost
just a little,
I lost
a
sound.
little glitch. I think you're back.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Samia.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, and you'd mentioned in the original question about, documents, and I in my litigation practice, I used to get a stack of documents like at least 2 feet high on my desk, and it would they were like, here you go, this is for your deposition in a few days or even tomorrow, and you've got to sift through all of these records and depose an expert, and that's something that AI should certainly be able to do for me, not just document discovery, not e-discovery, but I would like that tool to sift through with specific prompts I could give and point me in the direction of within 1,000 pages of where I need to go. And then again, that's a starting point. And then I can, dive in and hone in and make better use of my time instead of spending hours and hours sifting through documents. So those are two cases, in which I have seen that technology in general, but now certainly, especially agentic AI, that can really take your practice to the next level, and it still will not replace the skills that are required both from the legal students all the way up to seasoned and experienced professionals.
Absolutely. And I'm glad to hear that you rethought that syllabus, right? And how to drive the message home, which I would say is something that every legal department, every law firm needs to be thinking about. How are they how are they enabling their individuals and their talent? How are they setting up for success? What are the frameworks that they're putting into place? And you said a word there, it was experience, right? You coupled what the technology was doing with the experience of the professionals, and you put that together and you get some real goodness, right? So you're right. I hear the argument a lot from, very seasoned lawyers, law firm and in-house alike, that they are very concerned. How am I going to train somebody, right? The way that we trained them was putting them in a room with me, whether it was a virtual room or it's like a physical room, right? Plowing through documentation. I would say if you layer the use of AI, as you're seeing here on the page of what AI can do with your own experience of what you've seen in practice and transactions and litigations and what have you, you couple those together. Now you're having a really like powerful conversation and learning opportunity with those individuals around the expectations around how they practice law. Maybe Samia, you can walk us through some of the examples of what this partnership can look like here on this page around AI coupled with the human element.
Yeah, so for us at Mutual Tech, we're very purposeful in the legal team as how we want to introduce some of these technology pieces, whether it's AI or not. We want to be thoughtful. We want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable using them on the team. We also want to empower folks, not only in the legal team, but we do a really great job, I feel, at Tech of empowering the people to try new things in a ethical, responsible, and safe way. And so in the legal team, we want to automate things that our routine. We use AI in several areas of our company, both for external customers, but also internally using our own solutions to help streamline processes that we know were very manual at one point. I'm sure many folks who are tuning in today, if you're in the legal profession, you've probably had numerous NDAs that you would have to review, and lots of them look similar. A lot of them get negotiated in similar ways. There are obviously the outliers to those, but generally speaking, they're something that we've tried to streamline a little easier and better for our team to free up some time and space and resources for the larger things where we need more critical thinking, we need more analysis, we need stronger negotiation skills. And so we use workflow automation for our NDAs. And that's helped our entire company streamline the NDA workplace or workflow. And the other way we use automation for another legal workflow is when we use vendor processing and contracts. So our procurement side of the legal team and the business, we use it for our vendors. And that's been a great place that has seen value and gains with that efficiency. The other place is, being able to use AI and document sorting and creation, and also summarizing. That has been very helpful, whether you're summarizing emails in your inbox or you're summarizing a contract or even a section. It's been very helpful. And these tools, if you start to use them within your department or your unit or the entire enterprise, these are really seem like very small use cases, but they have profound impact and efficiency gains for the entire team. And it's also easy to start training folks with their comfort level, because they usually these are pain points for everybody in the organization to some degree. There's manual workflows, processes, things like that. And that's where people are generally happy to learn something that is going to give them more efficiency, or even take them out of the process, maybe not entirely, but maybe take them out of a couple of steps and give them some more space to do more of what they want to do. So the training piece in these kind of places seems like a welcomed opportunity. And it's also helped a lot of our team feel like they have more space to do the more substantive work that they want to do.
Absolutely. And when I think about some of our solutions that we're putting in place, right? You talked about workflow automation as one example. The creation of Aries at Mitra Tech, which is our own AI, layering it on top of TAP, our workflow automation tool, or putting it into Team Connect, really comes from listening to our customers into the marketplace as to meeting them where they are at in their comfort level, and really thinking about what they are trying to enable in their talent that they have, right? So the development of Aries here continues to evolve as we partner with our customers and with the marketplace, right? Whether it's us at Mitra Tech or any other vendor that you're evaluating in the AI space, it really is powerful to have that collaborative conversation and ensure that you have an environment of mutual trust to be able to talk about what you're trying to solve for. As we started this conversation, AI was not developed in a void. It was developed by humans and guided by humans. And that evolution to make sure that we are putting out product that is trustworthy and safe, but that it is also meeting the needs of what you're trying to enable within your departments or within your legal practice. Like if you're in a law firm, is really critical. So again, bringing back to what are you trying to enable? What are the soft skills or the information or the business decisions that you're trying to drive to that then informs the design, the evolution, and the adoption of AI? The minute that you turn it into a tech forward conversation around the functionality of what it could deliver and lose sight of the why you're doing this, you are going to have a significant struggle in bringing along the adoption from the individuals that are using it. And you're really going to lose the ability of leveraging the full functionality and the power of that AI or even a tech, right? I will say this: if you're implementing a matter management system, knowing what you mean by matter management really is important. Why are you asking people to put information into a technology around their matters, and giving them that why for themselves professionally, but for the greater good is important. No different with AI, that you need to have that bigger vision. Samya, when if you hear me say that, having vision and direction and providing that to people, does that resonate with you, or do you have a different thought on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think before any team, whether you're in private practice, you're in-house, or any enterprise for or business, I think you need to have a vision of, instead of working and operating out of fear of being replaced or not getting to the market fast enough and not having the advantage of the technology and the AI. I think it's important to take a step back and realize the vision and being very strategic is more important in the long term and for your sustainable success than jumping right into it and saying that, we've done these and we've used these tools and we can check off the box that, hey, we have an AI solution. But at Mitra Tech, like we're talking about, I've been privileged to be part of that journey and to sit on the AI committee and drive it and say, let's get the stakeholders of the business together, and we meet and we talk about what places do we want to introduce AI for our customers? Where are the pain points? Where's the greatest value that we can add, whether it's invoice review, or it's matter management, or if it's document creation and summarization, or something as workflow automation. Those are places where we've realized are both internally important for our enterprise to operate efficiently. So we believe in our solutions. We've tested it within our own feedback, and we're using customer feedback, and realizing that instead of just creating to create and get in the AI game, we have to be very strategic and have a vision. And so that's a very important thing for us. And I think it's an important thing for any enterprise to do, and to not get so swept up in taking action based out of uncertainty and fear, but realizing strategically, it's AI by design, privacy by design. By design, we've heard of that before, but I like to be a proponent of AI by design. Take it strategically, have a vision, get your people on board, and make sure that you're driving incremental changes and successes for a larger enterprise value and sustainable success.
Well, I just got signed out of Google, so there go my slides. I guess that wraps us up. Any questions from the audience that we want to take before we go to our next speaker?
Yeah, thank you. That was really an awesome conversation. And one of the things that I know it's kind of an old line at this point, but the idea that AI is not going to replace attorneys, but attorneys that know how to use AI are going to replace attorneys that don't, right? So a lot of what you talked to is just thinking of it in that frame. And we did get 3 questions, and and they're all somewhat related. So I would like to go ahead and read a couple of these out. So Hillary asked, how do we ensure AI reflects human values, especially in areas like compliance, bias detection, and ethical decision making? So that's a big one.
That's a great question. Liz, I don't know if you want to chime in, but I've got some thoughts.
I know you have a whole bunch of
Mhm.
thoughts there. So I'm going to turn it over to the expert. But I will say this to that that person is that lean into the conversations with the providers of that AI to ensure whatever is important to your organization is built into that, right? Every
Mhm.
single vendor out there is really looking to understand the nuances of industries, of practice groups, of jurisdictions, and to take that into account because when they go out to market, they want to be able to speak to that, but they also want to make sure that they're developing it in a way that is going to be impactful to them, to their buyers. But Samia?
Yeah, I'll answer it in two parts. You know, when you're adopting a tool, you want to make sure that it's got the ethical component. It doesn't have the biases. You know, so there are good questions to ask your vendors that you are considering in your tool selection. You know, at Tech, we've got a questionnaire. It's a security, privacy, and now AI. We've added AI questions on there, and a lot of them are directed for their engineering and product is to ask them what kind of testing do they do, ongoing testing for biases, what's their training methodology, what's their foundational model, where are they using, what are they using, are they building it from scratch? Understanding the technology in their tech stack is also important. It goes into feeling more empowered. So I would say from a vendor side, there are certain questions you can ask to make yourself feel comfortable about the ethics and bias component. And as a developer and deployer of AI systems, you, if that's the position you're in, work with your product and engineering teams and make sure that you sit early on as a legal professional. Make sure you sit early on in the development of these products and solutions, not just coming in at the end, like I mentioned, where legal used to come in at the end and say, oh, okay, yep, green light, this looks compliant. You know, that's not the era we live in anymore, especially for the legal world. We need to be part of the discussion early so that you can ensure that the models that you are creating, they are including training, they're including accuracy levels that you're comfortable with to reduce the liability gap and the risk exposure. Those are things that I do for Tech. I work very closely with our product and engineering teams, and I sit on many meetings that I don't really need to contribute things to, but I'm aware that once, okay, let's say the testing is improving its accuracy level, then it's my job to come in and say, okay, here's how, you know, we're going to take it from here. I think the risk exposure is diminished. So being able to sit early in on the development process is really important for legal. That's way you can actually guide engineering and product through the bias training, the technology development, as well as the testing for accuracy. And then the compliance is also our job to come in and say, okay, well, the EU AI Act came down with these requirements, or the state law here, you know, came down with these new regulations for AI. And then you can come in and sort of sprinkle in some of that compliance so that the product doesn't get to the end and they're saying, hey, legal, we want to launch this in 30 days. Can you just sign off on the compliance? And you're saying, well,
No.
can we segregate
That's
data?
not how it
And
works.
Yeah,
the
that was
engineering
that's
team's like,
nobody's favorite.
yeah,
Yeah.
engineering's like, no, we can't segregate data. And you're like, well, now we have to dismantle, you know, or we have to
Right,
push your launch
right.
out by like 90 days.
Yeah.
Reprioritizing things. So I would say there's two parts to it, but get involved early and ask the right questions and make sure, you know, you read a lot about technology. Lawyers sometimes don't want to read
Yeah.
the technical stuff. And unfortunately, we avoid numbers and we avoid tech. And we've got to now, we've got to
Yeah,
embrace both.
Those days are
you gotta
probably
put
over.
Yeah.
the
So this is great, and there's several more really good questions. But what I think we're going to do is we're going to save some of those up for the panel discussion too, because I think they're going to be thematic throughout the whole day. So I'll give you a little preview, just so you can start thinking about how you want to answer this, because these are both excellent questions. What do we want AI to not do for us? Where do we want to draw the line? Like in I think that's a very, very thoughtful question. And then another question has to do with where do you foresee the sort of responsibility and being held accountable for things that AI might get wrong? So put that in the back of your brain for later, and we can dig into that later on. But thank you so much. I thought that was an excellent conversation. I think this could just keep going and going, and I would be fascinated by the whole thing. But we have other fascinating speakers coming up as well. So thank you so much. So we are off to our second session now. Bye-bye. We'll see you later. Thank you.
Thank you.
So up next, we're going to be diving into the real world application of AI and legal operations with an in-house lens. Please join me in welcoming Shauna Rasciuto, Senior Vice President of Legal Affairs at Syntax, as she shares her perspective on how AI-powered legal technologies are being implemented at scale within corporate legal teams. I can't wait to hear about this. In this session, Shauna will walk us through what it takes to integrate AI into day-to-day legal workflows, holy grail, the organizational and cultural shifts needed for adoption. Maybe that's the holy grail. Success metrics and lessons learned from Syntax's own journey. Well, we'll learn about how they've done it, which is great. With her extensive experience leading strategy in legal technology-driven environment, Shauna brings an insight into how legal teams can evolve into tech-enabled business partners, which relates back to what we were just talking about in the last panel with the sort of fear and concern about technology and for attorneys. So this is a great time to sort of break down some of those barriers. So off to you. Very excited to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Kara. Just confirming you can hear me?
Perfectly.
Okay, excellent. So, so good to be here today. So nice to see all of you, to meet all of you electronically. But I will be covering all of those topics, maybe not in that exact order. My apologies to you, Kara, for not providing an updated outline here. But we will be, my goal today is really to share my journey in legal tech from start to go live, and kind of where we began our journey and where we are today, and hopefully share some lessons learned. Before I start, I'll just share a little bit about myself. So my name is Shauna Rasciuto. I am out of the East Coast. I am Senior Vice President for a company called Syntax. And I've been at Syntax for quite some time, but before my time at Syntax, I was actually in the data privacy space, and not to age myself, but I'm talking pre-Schrems, a very long time ago when data privacy was really in its inception, at least especially here in North America, and in the United States. So I came kind of with a data privacy lens into my role as SVP Legal for Syntax. And we are a technology company. So I want to give that kind of disclaimer, because our journey to legal tech go live is a little bit different when the ethos within your company is obviously one that embraces technology, because we are a technology company. So all of that said, there's a couple of big steps. There's obviously many steps that will be a part of your legal tech journey. But a couple that I'm going to focus on is really at the beginning, kind of getting buy-in, once you know that you need some sort of legal tech, particularly really what I'm talking about is a CLM, a contract lifecycle management tool. Most of these tools are now backed by AI, supported by AI. And so once you've made the decision that you know you need this, and I can assume that most of us already know we need this if we haven't already implemented. So how do you kind of get buy-in once you realize that this is the direction that you want to go within your legal department? And then a little bit about vendor selection, and then how to actually implement, right? Some tips and tricks for implementation. And then how do you actually go live on the tool? How do you roll out the tool globally, etc.? So again, I'm going to share little bits about Syntax as we go, because I think my journey and our in-house journey is obviously unique to our environment, but I think there's some parts of this that we will all face in our legal tech journeys. So when you have made the decision in your head that you really want to implement or purchase a CLM, the buy-in process can be difficult. There is a spend for a CLM tool. How do you justify that spend? I think really there are some basic justifications that I think are pretty clear, right? You're going to mitigate risk. You're going to minimize operational costs. But I think it's really important to speak with other people who have already done this process to get some of those real examples of why do we need a CLM, right? I think that getting very clear explanations of what the benefits are of an AI-supported legal tool can be difficult. And I'm going to share just a couple of those examples of the and again, within legal, within any organization, money talks, right? So sometimes it can be hard to say to your, senior executive leadership team that we're going to mitigate risk, right? That's what the tool is going to do. It's going to mitigate risk. It's going to make our contracting process faster, easier. Sometimes velocity of contracting can be very exciting to executives, obviously, right? If we are a vendor, and so getting customers signed quickly is obviously something that we value, but money talks, right? And so some of the examples that we've been able to provide, that we thought about in before we implemented, but that we then really saw come to fruition post implementation, was minimizing operational costs through utilization of the CLM, right? So we are able now to do things at a much lower cost within our legal team. So for example, we have senior legal attorneys kind of building out contract playbooks in the tool, in our CLM tool, and then we are utilizing junior attorneys to actually execute on the playbook. And I think, I'm not sure if it was Kara who said it, but AI is not here to replace us, but it's going to replace attorneys who understand AI will replace those attorneys who don't. So these junior attorneys are coming in and they're able to get a lot of the benefits of the knowledge and experience of senior counsel, because we've built a lot into the AI tool. And side note, right? Some of this was discussed by Smaya on the previous panel. AI is only as good as what you feed it, right? And AI really is going to generate based on what it understands. And so having those senior legal counsels and senior legal leaders being a part of that feeding process is really vital, so that you can minimize costs going forward in terms of what you need to spend in your legal team, and empowering contract specialists, contract administrators, non-JD legal support team members, etc. One really great example, though, that I love to use, because again, money talks, is, we were able to, at Syntax, we were able to use our CLM tool to realize where we were leaving money on the table with our customers. We were not charging for things that we had rights to charge for. We were not truing up accounts where we should have been. And it was really hurting our bottom line. We were able to kind of rectify that through the CLM tool. And I'll get back to that as I go later on in my discussion. But so once you're able to get buy-in and you've convinced everybody that you need this legal tool and you're all gung-ho, vendor selection can be very difficult. And there's some, I think that's a larger conversation as to how you pick your vendor. My one piece of advice there would be, don't look for perfect. And I'm going to come back to that as well later in the conversation about setting expectations for AI and its capabilities. But once you get to the point that you're ready to implement, what are some key things that I think are important for implementation of any tool, but particularly of an AI tool, is scope small, right? I mean, I don't know how many of you are involved or have been through global implementations, but they can go wrong very quickly. They're typically incredibly expensive, and a couple small missteps can really take you off and be incredibly costly. Try to limit the stakeholders that you're involving at the onset. These are just tech implementation, best practices, in my opinion. Limit the stakeholder involvement. Scope small. Once you get it off, we go through these vendor selection processes and we see all of this cool functionality that these vendors can offer, all of these cool things that AI can offer, all of these cool benefits that you can get out of the tool. It's very easy to get overly excited, to overscope, and then end up in a very costly situation. Even the best vendors can't help if you have failed to scope properly, right? My suggestion is scope small. You can always add functionality once you've stood up the environment, once you've stood up your systems. And I think it's clear that even within your own team, even within the implementation team, to set expectations, right? So I think at least there used to be, and I think we're coming around to the fact that AI is imperfect, right? We've seen through hallucinations, we've seen through all sorts of biases, right? We were just talking about that. We've seen through all sorts of examples that AI is not perfect. However, I believe there's a sense still that AI has some magical powers, right, that we don't have. But I want to maintain this concept and this line of thinking and this mental note that AI is only as good as what we feed it, right? It's ultimately a reflection of us as lawyers, as legal professionals, etc. So setting expectations in your scoping, in your design is really important as well. And just to give a couple of examples of that, and actually just to reiterate something that one of Samaya's panel just discussed was the concept of be clear, right? What is the matter management, I think is what they were talking about. But same thing, when you implement a CLM tool, what are you implementing, right? The CLM tool is vast. The functionality is great. There's many layers of functionality that you can implement. Be very clear. What are we trying to do? What is the scope of our implementation? And be very clear as to what is a CLM as we will define it, as we will utilize it. What are the functionalities we're trying to gain, right? And again, as was previously discussed, think about those pain points. Tackle one at a time. Don't try to boil the ocean because, like I said, these global implementations can go really far off budget if you try to do too much too quickly. But as well, I think in the scope small, one thing that I think that, and in the be clear, right, is don't have this expectation that AI is going to be perfect and that once you implement this AI supported tool, you're going to get to perfect, right? We're going to get to better in many ways. But one example is that, like in many technology vendors, your contract commencement date is the date of go live. There's lots of triggers. There's lots of contractual obligations that are triggered at go live. So one question that we keep getting asked by our operational leaders, by our non-legal stakeholders in the tool is, when can we get a list of expiration dates? We want to see monthly everything that's expiring this month. Well, we can't have that, unfortunately, right now, because we measure things from go live. The tool doesn't know when go live was. Go live is when we went live. That date needs to be manually put into the tool. The tool will never know that on its own, based on the scope that we implemented. And so the concept of the tool is only as good as what we feed it, the data out will only be as good as the data in, is very important, right? These tools are not going to do all of everything for us, but they're going to help us in our reporting. So other examples of reporting capabilities that we do have at this point, right, is or other reporting capabilities that we may be limited by are things like uncapped liabilities. I don't know how many times, as in-house attorneys, you've had stakeholders, other non-legal stakeholders come to you and say, hey, how many contracts do we have with uncapped liability on confidentiality breach? I don't know. You want to go read 7,000 contracts? That's up to you. But we thought that maybe that was something that we could have solved by the tool. Unfortunately, the tool doesn't necessarily know what is not in a contract as clearly as it knows what is in a contract, right? In fact, we can train it for that. And we've started to do that within our tool, as to teach the tool how to find what's not there. But again, these are kind of lessons you learn as you go. And so setting that expectation that we're going to get to good, we're not going to get to perfect on our first go live of our tool, on our first rollout. Then I think the next piece of the conversation, and I apologize, I'm going kind of quickly. We wanted to let the previous panel keep going. They were doing phenomenally, and I have a short window.
Take your time. We won't cut you off. We won't cut you off.
Sarah,
Keep going.
so
You're good. Take a breath. You're all good.
So once you kind of have built your scope and you've gotten to a place where you're ready to go live, I think there's a huge amount of value and consideration in the concept of change management that leads to successful or unsuccessful implementations of these tools. I think at our company, before we implemented, we had a differentiation in our minds of go live and rollout of the tool. So we went live with our tool internally, meaning just within the legal team utilizing the tool. And we stayed in that steady state for 3 months before we ultimately rolled out the tool to our global organization. So again, I encourage you to think about scope small and do what makes sense for your organization. There's this concept of like a big bang. We're going to implement AI and it's going to change everything overnight. That doesn't have to be the case. You can go at your own pace. You could take bite by bite until you get to the full implementation. And in my opinion, I think those are the more successful implementations where you just kind of add slowly to your functionality and make sure you get off the ground first. I think when it comes to change management, just like for any tool, it's really important to remember the human experience of change. When we implement these systems, especially AI systems, there's a lot of emotionally triggering language that you're going to put out in your rollout email. This is an AI supported legal tool, right? I think this is a very emotional concept, is utilization of AI. There's a lot of fear, again, about being replaced, about all sorts of success of the tool, accuracy of the tool, hallucinations. There's so much in the media about ChatGPT and AI and all of this stuff that I think it's very important to remember the very real human experience when you roll out an AI supported tool at your organization. And I think some ways that we tackled that fear, that immediate response that people may have, was to really lead with empathy. And it's kind of interesting to talk about feelings and empathy within the concept of AI implementation. But I think this is a piece that I think we've talked about a little bit, and we'll talk about more about what is the role of humans within the AI world or within these AI tools. This is part of that, right? Is understanding the human experience and being able to respond to the human experience so that these tools end up being well received within your organization. If you spend a bunch of money, spend a year implementing, designing, testing, etc., and you roll out a tool and people are too scared to use it, or people aren't really benefiting from the tool, then was it really worth it? I think it's really important to keep people excited about the tool, not scared about the tool. And also, again, to set expectations that AI is only as good as what we feed it. So, we're not communicating a company-wide rollout of this AI tool that you can ask anything and it'll give you anything and it's going to change our lives forever. It will change our lives, but it'll be slow. The tool needs time to learn. Setting those expectations so that you have a positive reaction on rollout is really important. So that's kind of my 2 cents on the journey of implementation, and how you kind of start with getting buy-in and ultimately go through your implementation design process and then managing the rollout. Of course, there's a lot more that could be said on this topic, but we have a short period of time. And so, I hope that my experience can be beneficial to others.
Thank you so much. That was great. And we've had some questions coming in. So if you're good with that, ask. This is a really good one. This just came up from Stephen. Should legal departments take the lead in creating AI governance policies for the entire organization? That is a very good one. What do you think?
So at Syntax, we have partnered with security and compliance. We're lucky that we have I should have shared a little bit more about our organization. We have a large footprint in Europe. And so with the AI Act, we kind of had a really great platform or starting point, right? So we always go by strictest standards globally. So once the EU put out the AI Act, that was what we were going to match to globally, comply with globally. And so I think that legal has a leading role, along with really security more so than compliance, I would say. I feel like legal and security will partner first. Compliance will obviously be there to ultimately enforce and continue monitoring the policy. But the design, I think, is truly legal to understand those compliance regulations, particularly the AI Act in our case, and then security as it relates to the operational kind of considerations of what, we can draft anything as lawyers. Can we meet those standards? Can we actually comply with our own drafting is a different question. Yeah.
But it's interesting point. If you aim for the tightest regulations anywhere, then it gives you more coverage everywhere else, which is great.
Look, we try to, right? Because we do have a large footprint out of Europe and a
Yeah.
large footprint out of Montreal now, even out of Quebec. And
Mm,
Quebec is now, right? We know that that's headed towards the GDPR. And even within the United
right.
States, keeping up with the 50 states. And as each one promulgates its own AI-like act will be too difficult for us. We'll spend tons of money
Mhm.
on outside counsel monitoring 50 states. So I
Oh
think
my
if you map,
gosh, I can imagine.
yeah, if you map to the most
Yeah.
stringent, you'll usually be all right.
Then you're usually in good shape. Yeah, and this is from an anonymous attendee, so I don't have a name, but this is now swinging a little bit more to the technical side of the conversation. And the question is it better to implement one? And this is a, if you have the answer to this, I will be very impressed. Is it better to implement one robust AI platform or stitch together your own specialized tool? And how do you decide? And this is, I know, a very nuanced a question with probably a very nuanced answer, but uh, how should people think about this question? Because it's a huge one on people's mind.
So I guess it's a huge question, but it's also maybe not, right? Because I think the
Yeah.
answer has to be unique to your business. So
Mm,
my, this is also like, I think as attorneys, we favor a more holistic model. We'd like to be able to see all
mhm.
of the risk in one place, right? My preference would be to implement one tool that ultimately encapsulates all of our, or rather one vendor that can ultimately service our entire business. That said, we have homegrown AI at Syntax, right? We're a technology company. So weaving those together can be difficult. I think it has to be what makes the most sense for your organization. And I think that also comes down to who really owns the tool. So within Syntax, legal really has taken ownership over our tool. And so we're taking more of a legal lean on how we want to see our risk overall, how we want to see our overall data, how we want to see our overall landscape. And so we are leaning towards a one solution option. But that's not at the exclusion of other options. And as a tech company, obviously, we are building our own stuff all the time. And so making sure that we kind of keep the right stakeholders involved. We have a quarterly steerco of a whole bunch of stakeholders that I try to keep out of the tool as much as possible because I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of groups in the kitchen. And again, scope
Oh yeah.
smaller, so excited to add functionality and let's do this, let's do that. I try to keep, my feet on
Mm,
the ground as it relates to what we should implement next, following those pain points, and also, tackling the low hanging fruit in the immediate and taking a longer time to really design how we get at those larger issues. So in that quarterly meeting of all of our stakeholders, we try to make sure that we're keeping abreast of all of the new developments that could be integrated into our tool. Um,
right.
but I think it depends who takes leadership, frankly, in those situations.
Right. And then the resources that you have, like you're saying, and it really depends on the organization. I mean, to try to manage a whole suite of disparate tools, for a smaller organization would probably be a nightmare. But then the cost of some of these more integrated tools may be out of reach. So it becomes very unique to each particular organization, I would say. So that's makes it tough. But
And I think that when the technical teams take more lead, you end up with more integrated solutions because they
right.
understand where the overlap is. There's things they're understanding that, I'm sure there's some really tech savvy attorneys, and I feel
Oh
like I'm
yeah.
one of them, but I'm not that savvy,
Mhm.
right? And so for me, I'm like, let's keep it all in one place where I can see it all and understand it all and have one kind of point of contact through the entire journey. We're not a small organization, but because of the legal leadership in this, that's the attitude we've taken. I have seen other companies where they're taking that more integrated option. They tend to be led by more technical folks who have a better,
Right.
maybe less fearful of how are these all going to speak to each other because there's a deeper understanding of the back end webbing, right? How can we web these together?
Right. And there's so many things that are as yet unknown about how this is all going to play out, including things like what is the copyright implications on certain things. We just don't know some of this. So it adds even more, potential unknowns, which is not exactly, the attorney's favorite place to play, right? When there's a lot of risk that's not fully understood. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This was really, really great conversation. And it sounds like there's some really amazing work going on at your team. So thank you so much. And we really appreciate your insights today.
Thank you so much, Kara.
Thank you. Okay, so now we are on to our next session, which is going to get a little higher level, and we're going to start to explore one of the most pressing questions facing legal teams today. And it's already come up several times during the conversations today, so this is great. How do we govern, regulate, and manage the risks of AI while still embracing its potential? Now, that is a big, exciting question to explore. So please join me in welcoming Niharika, I hope I'm saying that, Shukla, corporate counsel at Iterate.ai. Yay, I got it. With her unique perspective spanning both in-house and law firm experience, she will take us through the evolving role of legal functions in shaping AI policy and governance. She'll share how legal teams can proactively design governance frameworks, ooh, drive cross-functional collaboration, and manage the complex risks that come with implementing AI while ensuring innovation doesn't come at the cost of compliance or trust. This is a timely and essential conversation, again, as we've seen from what people are asking in the chat all day. This is really on people's mind. So we are very excited to have her share her insights for anyone navigating the legal implications of AI in a very rapidly changing landscape. So off to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kara. Okay, so we've heard why human judgment is more important in the age of AI and how legal teams are already using AI tools in practice. Now let's shift gears and talk about what ties it all together, right? Governance, policy, and managing the very real risks that come with AI and legal functions. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'm Niharika Shukla, in-house counsel at Iterate, where I oversee legal affairs for Iterate, and I've been here for nearly 6 years now. Just a little bit quickly about Iterate, right? It's a generative AI platform helping enterprises quickly and securely build AI-powered apps. We have a low-code platform called Interplay, which lets you rapidly launch and scale Gen AI use cases across functions like marketing, procurement, and compliance. Now, today's session is called From Counsel to Code. And no, that doesn't mean I've left the attorney job to become a full-time coder. I'm still more comfortable with the red lines than coding. But the reality is legal work is changing, right? And it's good to understand the framework so we can guide its use the right way. You know, AI can absolutely support what we do, but only if we adopt it carefully and put the right guardrails in place. So before I start, let me be clear, like Soumya, like Liz and Shayna here, all of us discussed, AI isn't here to replace us. It's here to kind of amplify us. So let's go next slide. Why AI in legal? So AI is basically, what is AI? Let's understand this first, right? It's basically machines trying to think like humans, sometimes impressively, sometimes hilariously. Now, as lawyers, there's so much to do. For instance, I work for a startup, right? We have a very lean legal team. Of course, we have a group of outside counsels that help us, but we have to be budget conscious and understand when to outsource, right? So we get over hundreds, actually thousands of contracts, let's say over a year, along with various other day-to-day legal affairs, right? From sales to procurement to product to IP to governance. There's so much. And again, you know, we talk about just CLM, but there are various other tools that help us manage, you know, like cap table, just corporate governance, so on and so forth. Now, and again, you know, we used to do that mostly manually. Now we have legal tools like contract management tools that help us, right? So over a period of time, I've understood that it's not just about speed. It's also about scaling smart. In-house legal today has to enable the business, not just protect it, right? Now, personally, I use AI to manage contracts, help with governance, maintain the cap table, manage our data room, track regulatory filings, you name it, right? Again, I have to be budget cautious, but you have to understand if you can use the tool and you go for it. Now I'm also exploring, of course, some tools that can help me flag key clauses and fine-tune language. You have Gemini, you have various other tools that can help you. These are free tools. Again, just a quick reference. Now, as far as law firms are concerned, I have heard that Harvey AI case text to cut research time. These are some of those very nice tools which one can use. So bottom line is, AI doesn't replace lawyers, it amplifies what we can do. But let's not forget, even with the new agentic AI tools, of course, everyone's now talking about agentic AI, right? It still needs a judgment. No tool can think like we do and bring the human touch and judgment, right? Next slide. Okay, so this particular screenshot, what you see is actually, I just pulled it up from LinkedIn. I came across this list and I just found it worth sharing with you guys. Again, it's just for reference, no endorsements, no promotions. It's simply to give you a sense of the kinds of legal tech tools that are out there and how, look at it, like how fast the space is evolving. Uh, and of course, yes, you need to understand which tool you can use based on your business, your budget, your resources. But I just thought it would be interesting to kind of put it up. Next slide. Okay. The counsel to code shift. Okay. This is the shift we're all living through. Okay. Now, legal is no longer just a checkpoint at the end. Like Shena said, we're becoming strategic stakeholders in the AI life cycle. It's from procurement to development to deployment to the ongoing use. So to do that, we need to understand how AI is actually built and trained. So you have to dissect the tool. Whatever you're building internally or whatever you're going to deploy from a certain vendor, right? So not to become data scientists, but so we can ask the right questions. You can spot red flags. You can build the right guardrails that work in practice and not just on paper. Again, I just put here just quick pointers for in-house counsel. It means few things like vendor assessments. It's not just for cost or features, but for transparency and bias testing. Make sure contracts include the right AI clauses, covering things like explainability, liability. We can talk about some of the laws that are coming up, right? Which are not AI focused, but still, like Shena said, it's AI touched. It covers high risk, red flagged tools. So we'll talk about that later on. But for law firms, like I've put it here, this shift opens up real opportunity to support clients in new ways, helping them draft AI use policies, defining what's allowed, what needs human oversight, and how it all gets audited. Next is advising on model fine-tuning, especially around existing and upcoming regulations, right? IP, data ownership, confidentiality risks, So I'll just give you a quick example. Let's say you're advising a healthcare startup and they want to use Gen AI to help doctors with clinical documentation. Okay, now this sounds great, but you'd need to help them think through patient privacy. There's PHI, training data sources. Where is all the data coming from? Where is it being stored? which cloud it's being stored on, the liability if the AI gets it wrong, and how to explain its suggestions to regulators. Oh my God, this is very, very important. Explainability. That's the counsel to code shift in action. And, like we all can see it, it's already here. Next slide. So, key risk areas in AI for legal. Now, of course, AI gives us support. It gives us incredible power. It has the speed. But with all that incredible power comes great responsibility. Let's break it down. And some of the biggest key risks, again, according to me, what I have understood, and it's not just in theory, but real life situations, right? I'll just quickly go through each of these risks. The first one is IP, intellectual property. Now, Gen AI creates content. It's what you feed in it. It's the input. But who owns it? Right? And again, I'm just talking about Gen AI, but there are various other tools which, let's say it could be as simple as somebody just picking up some tune from a music video or and then creating another tune out of it. So how do you identify who owns it? And what if it pulls from protected materials? This is a risk. This is how do you identify who owns what? So again, I'll give you another example. So let's say a vendor sends a pitch deck with AI generated visuals. Now, this deck has some visuals or images or voice, anything that contained real client, let's say it had visuals, right? So it contained real client logos from the web. That would be IP infringement, right? There could be a breach. So this will go to a legal no-go pile. This would be a red flag. You're going to be like, what is it? Let's go deeper. Let's dissect it. Now, another one very important for me is explainability. Now, it's we talk about all the AI laws that's coming up. If you cannot explain, so here it is. So there are many consumer-driven AI laws that have been passed, and if a tool cannot explain, or if you cannot explain how the tool is making a decision it's making, it becomes difficult to defend in front of the regulators or even your own team, or your leadership. So I'll give an example here as well. So let's say someone used an AI tool for legal research and it pulled a totally unrelated case because of keyword overlap. So it may look smart on the surface, but it made no actual sense in context, Therefore, you must double check everything. That's explainability, and a very important one. Again, another important one is bias and discrimination. We all know that AI models learn from historical data, and that data may carry human bias. If you're not careful, we may risk embedding that bias in automated decisions. Right. So let's take an example here. Let's take a vendor evaluation tool, actually let's take a vendor evaluation tool, for instance. And you want to evaluate which vendor you want to go with, right? This evaluation tool may rank the small minority owned business lower simply because they don't have the same volume of historical data. So the AI isn't being intentionally unfair, but it's the learning from what it's been fed. It's the learning from past patterns that weren't always inclusive or weren't considered. that kind of bias can easily slip if unnoticed, and it can create a consequence, again, a breach. Then again, a very, very important one is data privacy violation. Now, before AI was here, everything was about privacy. Everything was about data. It was, this was back in 2018, 2019, where we were talking about the GDPR, HIPAA, and focusing on all about data and how you are protecting that. Everything around privacy, right? There was CCPA, all of those things. Now it's that data being used to, of course, help us, support us, but AI loves combining data sets. But, just because you can doesn't mean you should, especially when it risks crossing privacy lines. I'll give you an example here as well. Imagine using meeting transcripts, right? So let's say we're here on Zoom, and we've now started using those you just record your meetings, right? And if there is sensitive information that's being recorded and being translated through a different cloud, or there are personal details that's been exchanged, and you go ahead and publish it without realizing it, it's a reminder that not all internal data is a fair game for AI use, even if it's technically accessible. So you have to understand where is it stored, what tool you're using. There's a vetting that goes in place. Like Shena said, the security team, you have to work in collaboration with them. They're your people. It's always the security team. At least for me, I work very, very closely on vetting, on understanding the risk, the risk assessment any vendor may have, any tool that we are using. So data privacy violation is another big, big risk area that we must be very, very careful of. Again, a lesson what I have learned is, if we don't know what went into the model, we cannot safely serve what comes out of it. That's the legal mindset we need with AI. It has to be curious, it has to be cautious and clear-eyed. So following up, we'll talk about AI governance frameworks. I'm just going quick. I feel there's so much to talk about, but anyhow, just let's talk about governance, right? This is where legal becomes the architect and not the inspector. You have to understand that's, we have to implement a tiered risk registry for AI tools. Like I just said, we should collaborate with business. You must collaborate with your engineers, but also your security team. Now, every team logs tools they want to use. Let's say I have a certain number of tools I'm using for helping me in my, legal affairs. There's HR management, there is sales, there's, multiple tools throughout the organization that we are using. You have to identify the red zones, like AI used in hiring. You have to be very, very careful with what kind of tool is being used and what are you using it for. Can you explain the decisions that it's making? Can you do you know the outcome it's going to make, and that's how is it trained, things like that, and of course the security teams help you to understand that. So they're creating, so let's say anything that has sensitive information. I would say here, just to end it, I know there's law firm responsibilities as well. How the law firms can help. You can help create templates, playbooks, even AI clauses in client service agreements. There are vendor agreements. There are internal AI policies that need to be tight, robust. How does the framework work? What is the architect around a certain tool? When are you launching it? everything around IP. There's a lot that goes through, right? So I would say, just remember, a good governance framework is like a good legal memo. It has to be structured, defendable, and with all the upcoming laws, it has to always be subject to an update. Please keep going back to what you are already having or have had in place. It is, we all know AI is evolving. First it was just data, then AI. Even AI right now, there's so much that is still happening. You still do not know the exact definition of AI. Now there's agentic AI, there's so much more that's happening, Gen AI, all of those things, right? So with AI, laws are also evolving, right? They're coming up, they're being passed, they're being adopted. Next slide, please, Dan. We are going to talk about that now. So let's step back and let's zoom out for a second. Because AI governance isn't just something we do inside our companies, right? It's not just about the policy and the tools you're building. It's become a global conversation. And the legal landscape, again, globally, is changing fast. Governments around the world are starting to catch up. And honestly, I feel it's a bit of a mixed bag, Yeah. I'm going to start with the EU AI Act. It's one of the boldest moves we've seen so far. And, of course, there are multiple AI related laws and policies at the, at the global level. But EU AI Act is basically the umbrella that covers it all. I think, again, it's very similar to what happened with privacy and the GDPR that kind of governed and was an influence to all the laws that eventually was adopted and is still being considered globally. So this act classifies AI by risk levels, requires disclosures, and even mandates audits for high-risk systems. It's a strong step, but again, it is still evolving. It's still, the rules and the policies here within the act is still evolving. Now, talking about US, it's more of a patchwork. We still don't have a federal law yet, but like I discussed, there are multiple AI-related laws and policies at the federal level that are often focused on specific aspects or applications of AI rather than just a broad overarching framework like the EU AI Act. But of course, like we know, there's plenty of action at the state levels, like the CCPA, there's Colorado, there's Virginia, all of those states that's very aggressively following the line here. So again, I think the big idea is with all of these laws that are being adopted, we do need guardrails, but we don't need roadblocks, right? I believe we should work with our team to prepare ahead, tracking where we use AI, logging tools that could be flagged as high risk, and just trying to make sure that we're not caught off guard. Yes, frameworks are important. Yes, rules matter. But, I think we also need space to test, build, and learn. So legal can't regulate innovation, out of existence. So instead of building walls around AI, we should be helping shape the guardrails, the kind that allows teams to move forward with clarity and confidence. So instead of building walls around, I think that's how I see our role, not as the team that slows things down, but the one that helps you make responsible innovation possible. Next slide, Dan. I know we're running out of time.
No, you're fine. You're good.
So I know I've I've put together a couple of cases. These are real world cases. Very interesting, and I can just quickly go through. The first one is, TikTok. There was this case where they were fined under GDPR for using AI to profile minors without proper consent. For in-house teams, that's the worst case scenario. Since then, everyone's, at least the social media tools have tried to kind of tighten the age verification and consent across our own platforms. There are various other case laws, very interesting ones, but we'll just move ahead. Next slide, please. Building, I know. So building internal AI policies, right? We talked about how policies are important and how they're playbooks for survival, right? We've the importance of AI policies, how in-house policies can work. Like for example, if marketing wants to use an AI copywriter, they must submit the model, describe data inputs, and send a sample out for review. Who at what stage is responsible must be clearly outlined in your policy. Who is accountable? Who is, you must kind of dissect each of those development, deployment, and usage state, before launching and while you're launching and even after launching your tool. I'm going to go ahead. I'm running out of time. So AI governance tools, again, very important, right? How do you fix or how do you address all of these risks? Of course, we are building all of these AI policies internally within the company. The legal teams are there, that there's security, but how there are also multiple tools which help you support and which help you take care of this. The one tool, at least with the one which I know, is, the IBM tool that helps bias monitoring. There is explainability and traceability. There's another tool that's, again, helps you track that, kind of gives you an understanding of where you're moving towards, if it's in the high risk category and all of those things. So yes, there are multiple AI governance tools that can be looked at. And you can use these at your pre-launch checklist, so yeah, you can embrace tools like this. We'll go next. Okay, the road ahead. So as AI shifts from simple tools to more, an automated system, the legal and security risks are growing and changing fast. So where are we headed? Now, I believe in-house legal teams need to step up and get involved early. It's, like I said, it's more at an architect stage than being an inspector. I feel law firms also have a big role to play. You can help your client run AI audits, prepare for incidents, build a compliance checklist that actually work in practice. This isn't just a theory. We're already seeing real changes. Lawsuits around bias in algorithms, contracts that ask for AI transparency, regulators setting clearer rules on how AI models. There's rules on and compliance for deployers, for developers, all of those things. Well, the takeaway is AI is moving quickly and legal needs to move with it, not just catch up. So we need to understand that we need to shape it and how it's used responsibly. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to say thank you so much for joining. I hope this gave you a little bit of a roadmap and a bit of encouragement. But I'm here to take any questions.
Thank you so much. That was great. And we actually do have a couple questions for you, if that's okay. I'm trying to figure out which one I want to ask first. I think I'm going to ask this one first. So in talking about sort of the risk and looking deeply at what tools you're bringing into an organization, do you think legal departments should demand explainability from AI vendors as a part of procurement? And what would that look like in a contract? Oh, sorry, I'm swimming around. So how would you suggest people think about that?
So, that's a very tricky question. if you are building a tool and you are deploying it, it becomes different. And the kind of AI clause you would have in your contract varies from, let's say, I mean, when you're developing, right? That would vary from what you may want to deploy. So, so let's say if you are reselling or collaborating or with another vendor who's developed a tool, okay, and you're deploying that tool. So that's different. But yes, you need to sit with the engineers to understand A, who is developing, okay. B, of course, the security team is also going to first have a vendor assessment done. But dissect, like I said, what data is being used, is there going to be a bias? Because again, everything's data driven, right? So once you understand, and I keep saying this, we're not here to stop the business. We have to amplify it. So you have to understand the risk. If you want to really, and I'm talking from a very practical perspective, as an in-house counsel, not as someone who's working in a law firm. When a law firm perspective varies tremendously. But let's say if I really want to make the deal happen, I have to understand what the risks would be if I go ahead and deploy a certain tool. I have to dissect what the infrastructure of the tool looks like. Data, how's the tool built? What cloud is it being built on? Where is the cloud? Is it on the client's side? Is it managed by me or the vendor? So there are various multiple steps that you need to go through, and then of course you need to put a clause around those steps. If that
That's great. And that makes a lot of sense. And then the other question is related, sort of almost on the other side of the question. And it's a great question. Is there a risk of policy theater in AI governance where teams have policies but no real enforcement or operational buy-in? So is there a whole, much ado about nothing kind of situation that we need to think about?
Sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Sure. So is there a risk of policy theater, right, around AI governance, where it's kind of like you're putting on a big show for something, but there's not really operational buy-in, or there isn't really an enforcement mechanism? So how do we keep ourselves from falling into that quicksand, so to speak?
Like I said, with all the AI laws that are coming up, it's a mixed bag. Even the policies, some of the policies are gray. You have to identify what falls under the high risk category, and again, it's this water flow arrangement which you need to, again, like I said, you have to have your own internal policy depending on the tool you have, and then move ahead ethically. I think just cautiously move ahead. There's no need to fear. There's no need to worry if you're doing things the right way. Have your policy outlined. Again, I come from a startup, right? We can't have a robust policy all the time because I end up pretty much doing everything all the time. So it's difficult to catch up with, okay, so this tool requires this kind of policy. So I have to just follow my basic, which is why we say it's the human judgment that,
It's your training.
yes, AI is just here to support you. It's like a legal assistant, but you need to have your own
Use your brain.
your
Right.
legal judgments, your human mind, your logic, your understanding of what outcome you want, what the business wants, what is good for the company, what are the risks, and then just move ahead with it. Of course, have the right language to protect you. There's liability, there's indemnity, all of those things. But yeah, just to quickly answer that.
And it's great how everything keeps coming back to the human brain and our own judgment. That at the end of the day where we come back to. Well, thank you so much. That was really insightful, and super appreciate the deep dive there. So we are already, amazingly, this time is going so fast. We're already on to our fourth session, which I have a feeling is going to be great. And a lot of the themes that we've been talking about already are going to come back up. So this will be great. So this is a panel discussion with some people you've met already and some new folks. So we have a dynamic panel discussion focused on one of the most critical questions legal departments are facing today. How do you move from testing AI tools in isolated pilots, right, which we're all probably doing in some way or another, to fully scaling adoption across the legal function? Okay, this is the big question. The legal industry is experiencing a shift. We all know that. AI is no longer just a buzzword. We maybe know that, maybe we don't. I don't know, maybe the jury's still out. It's a tool that's starting to deliver real value. But many legal departments still face challenges when moving from early stage pilots, oh yes, to wide scale implementation for a lot of the reasons we just discussed. That's exactly what we'll be exploring in today From Pilot to Practice, Scaling AI Adoption in Legal Departments. As legal teams begin to embrace AI more seriously, challenges around challenges around change management, huge, cross-functional alignment, also huge, and risk governance and operational efficiency come to the forefront. So in this session, we'll hear directly from legal leaders who are navigating these shifts in real time. And I'm sure they're all exhausted, right? Because it just takes a lot of work. So we're thrilled to welcome a stellar group of panelists, and some, as I've said, you've already met. So we have Soumya Kaushik, who you met earlier. We have Rachel Larentia, and we have Natalia Northrup, and we have Lin Yun, and we have still staying with us, who we just heard from, Niharika Shukla. So that will be a wonderful discussion. Each of these panelists brings a wealth of experience, and they will introduce themselves, of course, and a unique perspective on scaling AI adoption in legal, from strategy and governance to privacy and innovation. So before we dive into the discussion, I'd like to invite each of our panelists to briefly introduce themselves and share a little bit about their current focus when it comes to AI and legal. And I will just pick on Rachel. And Rachel, you can start, and then you can pick on someone you want to hand it to next.
Good morning, Rachel Lareniga. I'm Associate General Counsel at Cepheid. My background, I've been working in the AI ML space for the last, I'd say 10 years, more so on the ML space. I'm in AI, Gen AI products and services currently. I'm Associate General Counsel at Cepheid. I lead our AI governance committee, our AI responsible, we're developing our AI responsible use policy. We are working on, I'm at a medical diagnostics company. So think very highly regulated industry where there's a lot of privacy concerns, a lot of questions around human oversight and machines and their autonomy, given the type of data and the type of potential risks that exist with a medical diagnostics company. Happy to be here, happy to discuss and use my background to help anyone who may be joining this call. So thank you so much.
Great, and you have to pick on somebody to introduce himself next.
Okay, how about Natalia?
Thank you, Rachel. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Associate General Counsel focusing on privacy and AI for Medallia. Medallia is a customer and employee experience company, so we deal with quite a bit of AI. We have some features that we're offering to our customers, as well as we're buying a lot of AI, trying to kind of make our enterprise processes more up to current standards and up to current speed. So this is something that I do on a daily basis here at AI Moderation Council that we have, as well as we have an AI advisory board. So there's just a lot of AI within Medallia. And before that, I've been working on it, although it was not part of my title, at a few other companies. Seems like we've been doing AI for the past decade or so, but now that it has gained notoriety through the Gen AI features, everyone is now talking about it. So it's good to see some of this work coming to the forefront and being recognized for the importance that it's bringing, and all the dangers that it's also bringing with it, as well as the efficiencies that we're gaining from it. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Great, and let's, sorry, we'll go to Soumya. Yeah, Soumya, we always said Soumya today.
On someone.
That's all good. Sorry, I'm getting lazy.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Soumya Kaushik. I'm Associate General Counsel at MitraTech. In my prior career, I was in commercial litigation, and I am a legal tech co-founder And I'm happy to be here in my capacity as Associate General Counsel. I lead the AI and digital transformation at MitraTech. And so it's been a pleasure speaking with some of my colleagues here about how they are also driving innovation and change in their organizations. So thanks for having me.
Great. And let's go to Lynn.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lin Duong, and I'm very pleased to join our discussion today with my wonderful fellow panelists and all of you. About me, I had about more than 20 years experience working in private practice and as an in-house counsel at various multinational companies, such as Diageo, Mead Johnson, and most recently Align Technology, the maker of Invisalign clear aligners, where I was the VP and Associate General Counsel for Legal Innovation and Operations. Through my past senior global and regional leadership roles, I had the privilege of building and managing legal teams, spearheading legal innovation and operations programs. And in short, I love solving problems as a lawyer, but even more so, helping lawyers and their clients to solve problems even better and faster with innovative approach and technology. And this actually brings me to my current full-time journey in legal technology starting from earlier this year. And I'm currently working on developing new frameworks and automation blueprints designed to make legal and compliance work simpler, scalable, more rewarding, and fun. I also provide strategic advisory and consulting services to companies and legal tech companies and regularly speak at innovation and technology forums. Thank you again for having me, and I look forward to our interesting discussion.
Thank you so much. Nice to see you. And of course, we just were talking to Eureka, but let's go ahead. She can introduce herself again just to have that moment.
Hello, Hello again. Thank you in being here. I'm Niharika Shukla, in-house corporate counsel at Iterate, where I oversee legal affairs for the company. I've been here for nearly 6 years now. I am super excited to be here among all of you guys and just looking forward for the next session. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So we're very happy. I think we got everyone right. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. Okay, good. Well, very nice to see everyone. So we have a couple different questions that we're going to move through. And again, we encourage people to please put your questions in the chat. We are in the Q&A, I'm sorry. In the Q&A, we are definitely collecting questions. So let's begin at the pilot phase. Many legal teams start experimenting with AI, right, to solve a specific problem, but not all of them get beyond that first phase. For a lot of the reasons that we talked about earlier. So to kick things off, I'd like to ask, what was the first AI initiative you launched with your team? And what did you learn from that experience? What worked well? What surprised you? So for example, Lynn, you've worked on internal AI, legal AI chatbots. Samya, you've developed AI products and tested them in pilots. And Rachel, you have insights from Cephid's piloting phase. So we have to have more than that. We have Natalia, you have your first encounter with AI, in legal, and what were your initial impressions? So let's hear from you. So whatever order people want to jump in, just really curious to hear about what you learned from your piloting of AI tools in your organizations. Just jump right in.
I'll go ahead and start just because I introduced myself first. Thank you so much. So for Cepheid, what our issue primarily was defining a problem statement. And so from using AI within the legal organization, we said, okay, well, what are the potential use cases that we could use AI in? And there were several. We actually just had Cepheid as part of the Danaher organization, and we just had an AI workshop in our headquarters in Washington, D.C. And there were 5 use cases that were discussed. And the 2 that I can talk about, which I believe my panelists have probably also have experience with, is one is the data discovery. As a lawyer, you'll have people come up to you, various associates within your organization, and say, do we have any NDAs? Do we have any contracts that, I'll just give an example, have an unlimited limitation of liability? That'll come up in a due diligence for an M&A transaction, or your counsel will just want to know the risks. Well, if you have thousands of contracts, which given the appetite of the panelists here, we're global companies, you will have thousands of contracts. And unless you have a very robust CLM, which is a contract or a contract management system that has an AI capability, it's going to be very difficult to find that type of data. And so one of the use cases, the problem statement we have is a data discovery initiative where we are trying to use AI, natural language processing, to review contracts that we have in our database, thousands of years, thousands, not thousands of years old, but thousands of contracts, picking a time period, looking back five years, and using that. That was the first problem statement that we thought would be utilized and be useful in this type of situation. We call that data discovery, which in a medical diagnostics context has a lot of different different meanings. But for a legal organization, knowing what is in your contracts is huge, and it is a very simple AI use and natural language processing use, because that is exactly the type of use that AI can be used very simplistically, but developing a solution that can be used to know what's in your contracts for risk, for M&A transactions, for compliance reasons. There are just a lot of different use cases. So I think the first issue in our piloting stage was defining a potential problem statement and a solution that we could use.
Great. Anybody else want to jump in, or should I start picking on people?
I'll jump in. I think recently we've seen a lot of tools, and Niharika, during your presentation, you shared that slide, which I really loved, about all the legal tools and the different areas of legal tech, from, case management or CLMs. And I think our biggest challenge has been finding something that wasn't fragmented. Legal teams are often given very small budgets, as most of us probably know, and to fit in your resources, including hiring a team and expanding that team, it's hard to get 4 or 5 different tools that all do something different in the legal tech space. So we've piloted a couple. We've had some CLMs. So there's 2 challenges. One is we couldn't really move forward because we didn't find something that was a comprehensive solution that could do something like Rachel was saying, like tagging and document and data extraction, so you can get that answer to the unlimited liability in like 4 seconds, versus that's one solution, and then the other solution you have to buy, which is maybe a playbook or it's workflow automation. And so we didn't get a chance to get a full suite of technology that we really felt could be justified. And we're creating things in-house at MetroTech because we see pain points that are not being addressed by other vendors and tools out there that are not in the fragmented solution. And then the other thing I'd say was challenges when we do adopt something, it's hard to have the rest of the organization start to adopt it. It takes a lot of training, because even though we're using it within the legal team, we work a lot with revenue and product and engineering, and we need them to also understand how we now operate with these tools. So 2 challenges that we've seen.
Yeah, and Lynn, if you would, I'd be very interested to hear about your work on a team on chatbots, because of course, when many of us think about AI, legal and AI, we think about chatbots. Of course, that's just one very small piece, but any insights that you could bring to that?
Totally. Let me tell you the story. So I once
Yeah.
led the initiative of building internal legal AI chatbots from zero. Literally zero. No prior knowledge, no real expert or data scientist on the team, and even no access to a real large language model that I could train on. So to sum up the journey that I've been through, the team and I had to go around and use the chatbot building functionality from one of our existing vendor, I already approved, right, by InfoSec IT. And we purposely designed various use cases and assigned each case to a team member on the team so that we all could learn this firsthand. And I believe that we were very creative with how we could generate sufficient quality training data for each use case, and how we trained and refined the prototypes. Along the way, we kind of expanded the chatbot to include not just Q&A, but also workflow automation, intake, and triage too. So a complete agent that can have providing answers, but also intake entry as I think we started at roughly 50% accuracy and relevancy, and this is partly was due to the limitation of GPT 3.5 model back then. So this was quite some time ago. And by the time we launched, I believe that my personal chatbot, like the case that I work on personally, was at a minimum of 95%. So in contrast with the 75% of the New York City chatbot back then, and a normal norm of, let's say, 92% of a human. And in my particular use case, I launched two different prototypes and allowed our internal testers to have some fun with it. To really, really try it, have some fun, to comment on it, and even vote for their favorite model. So I personally learned a lot in this process, not just the technology, but how creative and efficient we can become. So for me, that is simple. Just pick, a workable or a pain point, start, do, test, receive feedback, learn, improve, repeat is at the core of design thinking concept, right? And I can assure you, it's a lot of fun and very, very rewarding.
Yeah, it is fun. I agree. Natalia, what was your first encounter with AI and legal, and what did you learn? What were your initial impressions?
So I've been at two different companies where we've implemented AI, and I think it does help to find a pain point that is outside of legal. Because if you just tell people I need someone to help me with my contract workload, it kind of becomes a you problem that nobody really wants to solve. But if you turn it into it's a problem that's affecting other business functions, then I think you can get more traction and other partners in trying to push that forward. So the very first time that we've implemented was a couple of years ago because we were dealing with thousands of contracts that Rachel mentioned, and no one knew from the security team what were the obligations when it comes to data incidents for the notification of customers. And so going through these thousands of contracts, trying to pull out the language, we needed AI to understand where we've committed to some 24-hour, 48-hour immediate notification and all these variety of different flavors of what you can agree to. And so that was the first tool that we bought. We went with a vendor, ran a few, it was a small pilot, ran a few proofs of concept exercises, picked a vendor, and then loaded all the contracts. It was a lot of work to try to get it to work, but it then ended up being used to create a beautiful spreadsheet for the security team to know exactly when they have all these notifications, who to notify. And then from there, it kind of proved to be useful to do AI analysis of other sections, such as liabilities and warranties and maybe anything else that you would want to slice and dice. And it's similar here at my current company. I think you can get a lot of skeptics, particularly people who have been in legal in-house departments for a while. There are some dangers that come with it, right? Because we have junior attorneys who are still rising in their careers and maybe should not be relying on the AI tools so much. It's obviously not a judgment replacement, but if it's used properly for the supporting tasks that it does so well, then I think it works well. So it's been working quite well in both companies that I've seen it.
Great. Okay, thank you. Those were some great answers. So we're going to switch to the next question, which of course builds on the last question, as you're moving towards scale. So once a pilot shows promise, the question becomes, how do we scale this, right? And I think this is probably a place that many of the organizations represented by the audience are dealing with at this point. So I'd love to hear from folks, what steps did you take to move from a successful pilot to something more permanent and far-reaching? Did it require changes in your team structure, maybe budget, vendor partnerships, internal processes, or all of the above? So Soumya, if it's okay, I'd like to start with you. Your framework for vendors in creating AI programs for use cases seems highly relevant to this question. Would love to hear your perspective on this next step phase.
Yeah, so we talked about this. Actually, Liz, who was on the prior panel with me, we have had really great conversations here at Tech about when you want to adopt AI and you've got the stakeholders on at the table ready to take that next step. What operationally and tactically do you need to do? And so we've developed a framework at Tech, which I'm happy to share if anyone's interested. But we started with the people instead of bringing the tool and then getting the people around it. We actually started with the people, and we did a lot of got a lot of feedback. We've understood what our employees and customers need, and we used that to assess the pain points and the problem statement, essentially. And then we built a framework around that, and we strategically created tools and solutions around the feedback, and we strategically brought in tools for our people to use based on the feedback. And we have an AI committee that reviews both of these external and internal uses. And the framework essentially shows you how legal should actually, maybe counterintuitively, sit at the center of this process and policy creation and review process and adoption, because legal touches on all of the, what I say, like the spokes of the wheel, whether it's product, it's engineering, it's risk and compliance, it's data, it could be product and marketing, branding. All of those spokes require legal review from a compliance standpoint. And so our framework really sets legal in the center. And we talk about how the actual framework is created. How do you create a committee? How do you create the policy? The policy is the next step for many people. We jump to the policy and say, okay, check the box, we've got a policy. But at Tech, we say, okay, a policy should come at the end, so we're not reiterating this policy over and over and over again, and then our people have to take training after training, which they start to, one, lose confidence in their own organization, and two, the compliance the training changes so often that they're now confused as to what's really the policy, what are the guidelines. So the framework has been helpful for us, and we haven't had to iterate and change too much. It's a little broader than I think most organizations would want to take. A lot of us start with, let's make the policy you cannot use AI until legal approves it and all these other stakeholders. And we started there. We realized that wasn't empowering our people. It was causing friction to adoption. And so we created a little bit of a broader framework and policy, and it's been really successful for us.
That's great. There's probably as many approaches as there are people listening to this, right? But it is great to hear. And Rachel, if I can pick on you again, I'd love to hear how you approach scaling after your initial pilots and maybe some of the organizational change that you saw that needed to happen.
Sure. Well, Somia was really talking about governance. From that perspective, we started with a charter to figure out, and I agree, Somia, legal is the spoke here. We really legal touches a lot of the issues with AI. And Lynn, I can feel your pain because I have the benefit of having access to data scientists. And on Friday, I was in the process of building an agent myself. And I think and I know this panel is really speaking to a lot of lawyers in the audience. Lawyers are slow technology adopters. And so just finding a technology solution that integrates with Word, considering all lawyers use Word, or it's really kind of focusing on how to get adoption with just a generally non-tech savvy group I think legal is changing, but generally speaking, attorneys are not tech enthusiasts. iPhones aside, Blackberries aside, I know it's a dinosaur, but
Blackberries.
we're just not tech enthusiasts. I know I just really dated myself, but I still
No, I like hearing the Blackberry shout out.
But what we did is we started with a charter. We looked at who within the organization was a stakeholder. So obviously legal, somebody from product, again in medical diagnostics. We need somebody from quality. We need somebody from regulatory. So especially if you're in a regulated industry, quality and regulatory are huge. And then when you start talking about your various policy versions, then you've got your quality management system that comes in. So there's different, and I know Lynn came from a regulated market too. There's different,
Yeah.
different levels that are going to be involved depending on what type of industry you're in. But getting your stakeholders is key because you also want somebody in IT, you want somebody in product security, and cybersecurity. So just building out your stakeholders for that charter is huge, and then developing the policy is secondary. What Soumya said. So just finding who your stakeholders are, talking about your policy, and then actually having smaller subcommittees within your AI committee, because you will have special cases for software use cases. Because if we're talking about just using AI as an efficiency purpose, if you're using AI as an efficiency tool within your organization, that's quite different than using and incorporating AI into your product. If we're talking about like using AI as an efficiency tool within the legal organization, that's one use case. But when we start talking about using AI and incorporating it into our product, especially when you're using, I don't know, an algorithm within a medical diagnostic, or when you're incorporating AI into your product, then you actually touch regulatory, and that becomes a completely different issue. I know a lot
Yeah.
of us
And I
are
see
software
Lynn
engineers.
is nodding
Yes, and I
vigorously.
know Lynn
Lynn is,
he comes from a
yeah,
regulated market too. And
yeah,
when I say regulated market, I'm not just talking about medical. I'm talking about fintech. I'm talking about anything that
yeah,
touches utilities, anything that touches a regulated market. It is a very different situation when you hit that. And a shout out to the
sure.
FDA. The FDA is starting to touch AI and starting to actually have
Mm-hmm.
like draft regulations that are describing AI. And nobody really knows how to handle that except for people who have some background in AI. So that's really key here. I
Yeah,
think I hopefully I answered that, but product, but
yeah.
scaling really, you really kind of need to start at the roots, which is developing a charter, getting your stakeholders. That's really paramount. And then the second part is developing the policy, what Soumya said. But I do completely agree. I think legal is a huge spoke in that wheel.
Yeah, and the FTA is a great example. We actually had I have a podcast called Building AI Boston, and we actually had Dr. Mibat from the FDA. She's the inaugural chair of the Digital Health Advisory Committee on, and talking about what she sees AI in medicine is fascinating. But Lynn, if we can, I'd love to have your tell us what's behind your vigorous nodding, because we'd love to hear your perspective on this as well. What you could add to this conversation.
Sure, Kara, and very well said, Rachel. Wholeheartedly agree with you. And I think what Soumya said earlier also resonate with me because I also use the PPT framework: people, process, and technology. Technology will come after people and process. And so, assuming that we already have the foundation laid out by Soumya and Rachel, I'm going to build on top of that. And in the spirit of being people-centric, I think to me, empowering users is the best approach, if not the only way to scale. Because legal operation resource is very limited. Let's not kid ourselves. We don't have an army of people that we can mobilize, at our discretion. And each of us only have a pair of hands and only 24 hours if you volunteer to work around the clock. So there is this much that we could achieve. But if we do it differently by empowering people, sky is your limit. First, I think putting the technology in their hand, but make it fun and guide them through baby steps. Involve them as early as possible in the process. Pilot is a good starting point, and that should include technology screening, validation, build up the excitement, build up, the interest from there. And beyond this, I remember that I once used legal hackathon to train and scale no-code workflow automation tool. So what we did was I kind of invested in 3 different regional hackathons where I asked the legal team, so here are all the lawyers and supporting staff, not just supporting staff, but the lawyers too. They came to the workshop without any knowledge, but with a problem they want to solve from a workflow automation standpoint. Anything that is kind of repetitive, but low-hanging fruit, right? Low risk. They came to the workshop without knowledge with a use case. We trained them right there on the spot, guide them through how to work and build an automation app. And they walk away with the first app they have built, feeling so cool because lawyers are not tech savvy. That is uh, the perception, but we want to change that perception. We want to make it fun and engaging for them. So they walk away with a prototype that is workable, and they can be very proud to share with their colleagues and even family that, I just built an app.
Yeah, vibe coding opens up a lot of cool opportunities for experimentation.
Totally.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
the team enjoyed it thoroughly, and we see an increase by 7x of automated
Oh, wow.
workflow used by internal users. And when I look at the dashboard, I saw regional general counsel, senior directors for legal, etc., build their own workflow automation.
That's cool.
So that tells you,
It's very cool.
it's kind of
Yeah.
fun and engaging.
Yeah.
So
And kind of
first,
making people feel like they have agency and that they can do this is very helpful.
totally putting the technology in their hand. The second
Yeah.
point I want to make is to recognize, reward, and share the best practices, the best questions asked through these tools, and the innovative approach by the users that will have, build that momentum even further. And third, even better if you could let them be in charge of driving continuous improvement. So build the foundation, empower them, and then hand over to them. And by doing so, I think we all will be less worried about adoption, change management, because they are your change agents, and even proving your ROI, because they will prove their ROI for you. They will tell you how much time saving they have achieved, or even how much more compliance efficiency that they have achieved together. I once used another formula by calculating the number of questions, translated into number of hours, and then translated into a potential headcount that I got for absolutely free without any additional funding, of just simply by using an AI chatbot. So I think that
That's
journey
pretty
has
cool.
been very informative, but a lot of fun.
That does sound fun. I like how you say fun a lot. That's good. It is fun. So I want to switch a little bit now to everyone's favorite topic, trust, risk, governance. So we all know AI and legal comes with a unique set of concerns, and this has certainly come up in the questions and the different conversations today around data privacy, right? Bias, accountability. So how do we ensure our AI tools meet compliance? We've talked about this, how sort of at length today, which is great. Do you have a framework, a checklist? What can people do? It's a lot of I think there's a lot, we tell people a lot like, well, you just have to figure it out kind of, which is, hard if they don't have maybe a big team to help them with this. So I would like to start with Niharika, can you talk a little bit about how people maybe can think about building in checks like audit logs, or maybe how we can expand about maybe some practical ways people can think about some of this compliance sort of risk mitigation? Any tips or tricks that you think would be useful for people just right now as they go away and think about this conversation?
This is, I think, in addition to what we discussed just previously, right? This is all about collaboration. Of course, you have to collaborate, you have to understand. I mean, amazing points before. So I'm just going to add on to that and just talk about the audit logs. Again, there is this basic checklist you have, right? Can you explain what will the AI do if something goes wrong? Can you find the problem? If and when you find the problem, can you fix it? How fast can you fix it? Can you then the explainability? I'm just going back to the slides, what we discussed.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
Mhm.
it's just the explainability, right? Can you confidently stand behind the AI's work? Do you know how it's coming to that decision? Is there a bias? And again, there are two ways you look at a tool you use internally and a tool you develop. So there are different checklists for both of those things. Like, I keep, coming back and try to kind of differentiate first to understand what tool are we talking about? What is its use? Where is it going to be used? How is it going to be used? Again, are we developing it? Then there's another checklist. Then there is another kind of risk in government and all the policy governance and all the policies that come across it, right? Whereas whereas if you talk about a tool that's you're using, which has not been developed by you, by a company, there's a different kind of policy checklist, audit log that goes with it. Then you work with again, it's the PPT, right?
Mhm.
Just like Lynn said, for each of those instances, and then you just go with it.
Right. That's great. Thank you so much. And Talia, you and you offered to speak about this, so I'm not putting you on the spot. So thank you for that. But your insights on the ABA's formal opinion 512 certainly highly relevant to this uh, conversation, and wondered if you could talk to us a little bit about that. That would be so great.
Yes, happy to do that. So if you're not familiar with it, I highly recommend you find it and read it. It's ABA Formal Opinion 512. It was issued in July of last year, so it's been on the books for about a year now. And it was really spurred into existence from all of the adoption of Gen AI tools and some of the well-publicized ethical missteps that have been in the newspapers about lawyers, unfortunately, using AI to source some legal research or some drafting of briefs and not really taking responsibility for looking at whether the cited cases actually exist or do they stand for what the AI told them they stand for. And so at this point, you will also see that a lot of courts have put out their own court standing orders telling people whether AI is appropriate for use in their court or if it's absolutely prohibited. And so it's important to know also what the courts are doing here. But if we just look at the opinion 512, you will see that it kind of ties all of our ethical responsibilities as lawyers to this use of new technologies. So essentially saying that this is something new and therefore no rules exist will not work. Basically, it's just a different tool and this is how you need to think about it. You still need to take full responsibility for your work product. And so they discuss all of the applicable model rules, the 1.1 on competence that you have to, as a lawyer, even though we're all very slow adopters, Rachel is right. We don't go beyond BlackBerry and the iPhone, but it is our responsibility as lawyers to learn about this technology, particularly if we're using it in providing our services. And we must exercise our independent professional judgment in using these tools and in baking what they give us into the final work product. There's also very important, I saw a question in the Q&A about privacy and confidentiality. So confidentiality is model rule 1.6. The opinion talks about that as well. And in using the tools, we cannot compromise client confidentiality. So we absolutely cannot use any free tools. It has to be an enterprise license. And you have to make sure that it's not being trained on the data. I think as this continues evolving week by week, I think there are now new concerns about some of the RAG style models and that potentially, even though the promise is being made, it's not being trained on your data, actually it's retaining some of that data. So stay tuned on that one. There's also model rules 5.1 and 5.3. Those are in supervision. And what's interesting is that it's now clear that we are not responsible just for supervising junior attorneys and anyone else who is reporting to us, but we're also responsible for supervising our AI agents and any AI that you're using. So you have to take full responsibility for what's being given to you. There's also to the
Mhm.
extent that you're using it internally, I guess you will inform your company that you are doing it, because there's also the informed consent. So that's Model Rules 1.6 and 1.8. And you have to disclose your use of it. And it gets a little bit tricky there, because it's not just the final work product, but in some of those rules, you will see that there is responsibility to also identify it if you're using it in your research. So particularly if you're handling litigation in-house, and this is something that you're doing for your briefing for the court, you, in some courts, have a duty to disclose that you've even used it for research. So that's the rule on candor to the court, Model Rules 3.3 and 8.4. And overall, just I would recommend that everyone reads this rule, thinks about it, and we need to be very careful. Your lawyers, particularly younger ones on the team, they're already using these tools, whether they tell you or not. And
That's
so, yes, willful blindness is not an option. And as a leader in legal, you have to understand how your teams are using it, and what kind of data is going potentially out there, and also what is the feedback that you are receiving, and are you properly analyzing it? You have to be very critical as to what you're getting back. So really good opinion, very thought-provoking.
Mhm. Yeah, and thank you so much for that deep dive. It's really helpful. And maybe if we say if you can only remember one thing after you listen to this talk today, remember what she just said about essentially that free tools. There's no such thing, because they're not free. They're taking value from you in different ways. So be very, very cautious with any tools that are free, because you're the data, right? The data you're putting in is how you're paying them. So that's something to be very careful with. Okay, so now we're going to go on to the last question for the day, and then we'll wrap it up very soon. But this is in some ways the most exciting one, I think, and the most fun, is really some predictions. So we're going to think about what's next for AI and legal. So we know, as we've said, it's evolving rapidly, but so are the opportunities, right? And where do people see you? We have this illustrious panel, really interested to see where people think things are going. Are you exploring newer use cases like contract negotiation, right? With generative AIP, predictive analytics and litigation? What is this all going to look like? So, Lynn, if it's okay, I'd like to start with you and hear what you can tell us more about leveraging generative AI for contracting and predictive preventative technology and compliance and litigation. What is your view of the next near-term future?
Totally. Thank you, Kara. So I actually had the privilege of seeing these technologies evolving over the time. In my opinion, generative AI contracting solutions have been around for some time, and many of us here already have had first-hand experience with various platforms and point solutions. Recently, I've seen these tools um, evolved into quasi-agents that not only automate drafting, review, and negotiation, but also embed robust governance and compliance frameworks directly into the process. So by leveraging companies' knowledge and real-time data, they now deliver greater consistency, risk detection, and policy alignment better than ever before. I think this evolution is empowering business users with true self-service contracting while freeing legal teams to focus on higher value and strategic work. So that's my take on generative AI contracting solution. Speaking about predictive and preventative technologies, this may be new to some of us, but it actually started a few years ago as well, and recently became more mature. They are rapidly transforming compliance and litigation landscape by leveraging AI and advanced analytics to anticipate risks and identify potential violations before they escalate. These tools can analyze large data sets such as emails, contracts, internal communications, transactions to flag patterns and abnormalities um, that suggest emerging legal or regulatory concerns. As adoption grows, companies are moving from reactive compliance. This is a real trend right now. Companies are moving from reactive compliance meaning responding after the fact, to proactive risk management, which helps reduce litigation costs and regulatory penalties. In the very near future, I believe that such technologies will likely become central to real-time monitoring, early warning system, and even automated litigation. This will fundamentally change how legal teams operate.
Wow, automated litigation. That's an amazing thought. So thank you so much for that. Okay, next I'd like to speak with Niharika, and definitely see a huge potential for AI in helping legal teams become more proactive. Could you elaborate on that?
So I know we all have talked about various tools the legal team uses, or actually, we've not just talked about tools, we've also talked about how, usually the budget that's decided for the legal team or the legal, how limited budget you need to work with, right? And the resources you have, whether it's hiring, whether it's, having various tools, and, it's just not the contract management platform that you use, right? I mean, just generally speaking, there are so many other tools that, you use on a day-to-day basis. It's just collaborating with your sales, just keeping up with your sales. There is contract management, there's pre and post contract execution management. There's data room, who accesses to it. Then there's diligence, there's cap table maintenance, there's corporate governance, board meetings, there's your equity management. There are so many things we do on a day-to-day basis. Now, of course, there are various tools that you get to use. But like we've also discussed, let's say contracts, for instance, okay, just contracts, for instance. I don't think we still have a tool that's comprehensive, that you can, that you're, let's say flagging out indemnity and I'm speaking very practical, okay? Practically, I have not seen one. But just flagging out, let's say, a particular clause for your diligence checklist, that you have someone investing in your company, and you want to pull out some data in 4 seconds. So even with negotiations, I don't know about you guys. I am I still feel that human involvement, that human touch ends up more, at least just speaking personally, I cannot trust with. But they've started exploring so much so that you can negotiate online, so
Mhm.
it's evolving from automation to augmentation. But I don't think it's there yet, and I see so much potential because it is still evolving. Of course, there are laws that's coming up, so we are being cautious, we are building something, or at least trying to build something around those areas. So I am super excited, I mean, Lynn, and then you, Kara. I mean, you guys are doing so good and just so inspiring, when I see someone build. And Soumya, you mentioned you were part of a legal tech, right? Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see we as lawyers have also or are trying to become coders, or trying to get in that field,
Yeah,
because the exposure and the understanding we have, you cannot, an engineering person cannot have that umbrella landscape view. It's you who's
exactly.
looking into that day to day, talking to sales, talking to business, talking to your finance, talking to even the CEO, the CTO who wants to make the deal happen. So there's so much that goes into it. So you want to protect the company, you want to make the deal happen, but there's so much, of course, you know. So I am just looking forward to the next wave. Uh, yeah,
Yes.
so that's my view.
Thank you. And we definitely know it won't be boring, right? We know there's a lot of interest. It's going to keep us on our toes. So Soumya, what emerging use cases are you seeing or exploring, perhaps related to product development, to your product development?
Yeah, in our product suite and solution suite, we have a chatbot. The AI chatbot Aries is popping up in different areas and products under the Mitratech suite. So that's been a big focus of ours, and we're very excited about it, doing lots of rigorous development and testing. But I think that sort of leads into what I predict for the legal industry is what I personally would like to see is what we're creating here with Aries, bringing that into the legal team, but also providing that out for the rest of our clients is an agent, is an assistant. We have all these fragmented tools, like I was mentioning, and we've all sort of said there's nothing comprehensive across the board we could say is does it all. And I would love, for example, Dora came down and it was effective in January, a compliance requirement in the finance sector. And we got a slew of Dora addenda to sign and to read. And we are there are certain specifications under that regulation and legislation that contracts have to have. And if you're not well versed in it, you will read it word for word, and then you'll go to the DORA legislation and you'll find that section, Article 2, whatever it may be. And you'll now have to do this comparison. And that takes a lot of time, and you feel that you might be missing something. And so, for example, I would love for an assistant to be able to say, I type, this DORA addendum, I want to know if this is absolutely compliant with DORA, or are there additional requirements that this company is putting in? And lo and behold, as you all can imagine, there are way more requirements that are being added that are not required by the legislation. And so now those are things I want to be able to get in a matter of minutes. So something like an assistant, not just for that example, but overall an assistant, an agent that's going to be able to say, hey, this indemnification clause for a deal of this size, the ARR this size, we close this deal in this amount of weeks and we use this indemnification in this super cap. Instead of having a paralegal on the team have to go find that information. So I think this chatbot digital assistant agents is going to be the future for certainly at Mitratech for us, hopefully. And I think largely I'd love to see legal tech take that leap too, is using it as a sidekick instead of, like I had a session earlier about, it doesn't replace us, it enhances us, but use it as a sidekick and empower those who are junior associates and paralegals to give them this tool as well and help them read through the lines. One last example I'd give is a lot of us get red lines back and forth, and we've got maybe 10, 15 version control becomes an issue. But a lot of the times the training junior associates, you want to explain that every red line or every deletion is there for a reason. Even if one word is deleted, you should not just assume it's a small edit. Really understand the context as why that word was deleted. Something as much as if you're getting licensing language and the word worldwide gets deleted, that's massive implications for your license. Something like that is maybe innocuous to a junior associate, but that agent would be able to say, I'm reading between the lines for you. Here's what the implications are for deleting that word. And I think that would be such a great assistant to junior associates and seasoned attorneys to save time.
Great, thank you so much. And I know we're running out of time, so we'll wrap this up pretty quickly, but we have one last prediction we'd like to get to before we end.
Is that for me?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Sorry, yes. Apologies.
Thank you, Cara. So my prediction of where legal, first of all, in medical diagnostics and like assay development, the use of AI is it could really just be life-changing, game-changing potentially in the future. So Cepheid is definitely working on solutions that would potentially use AI in the efficiency to getting an assay approved and being utilized. But where I see it from a legal organization standpoint is that I do see very similar to what Soumya and Lynn are saying, and that is just our associates using more technology-driven agent solutions where even if you don't code, you can train and build an agent right now using natural language. And that's the thing that's beautiful, is that you can use a user interface like, I don't know, Microsoft Copilot to actually develop an agent that you don't need to know Python. You don't need to know, but if you just know what the problem is, you can actually build an agent that's very good. And I don't know who said it, but our software engineers, our data scientists don't know the pain points that lawyers necessarily hit when they're negotiating a contract. We do. We know what it takes from a deal to real, from getting a sale to actually getting a contract executed. We know the pain points. And so I believe attorneys can help build that solution. And again, you don't need to know Python. You don't need to know code. You just need to know you need to have an innovative mindset. And that's what makes me so passionate about AI, is that I look at my panelists, we all have very innovative mindsets. We all love technology. We all want to build something that's going to make our lives more efficient. Using an agent as an assistant, not replacing you. Again, going back to a fundamental NIST standard, is that there's human oversight of AI, and that used AI to create this memo about worker compensation claims, and it was a complete deep hallucination. It cited,
Oh, wow.
121 FSEP 9th Circuit 2021, and when I site checked that case, it did not exist. All of the cases did not exist. And if I had filed that as a brief, I mean, I'm also,
Oh, yes.
a litigator. If I had filed that as a brief, I would have been fined. But I thankfully site checked it and realized, wow, this doesn't exist. And so again, human oversight is key here. Even if you're using agents or natural language, it's key.
Right, agree. And anyone else with a prediction? I know we've run over. This has been such a great conversation. It's hard to wrap it up, but anybody else want to have a quick final thought? Oh, okay. Well, sorry to wrap it up so abruptly, but we did go a little bit over. Again, such a great conversation. Thank you so much to everyone for this incredible insight that you brought to us today. It's clear that while the journey to scaling AI in legal departments has its challenges, certainly, the potential for innovation and efficiency is immense. We appreciate everyone so much for being here and sharing your experience. As we wrap up today's AI and Legal Virtual Summit, I'd like to take a moment to thank all of you, our speakers, our attendees, for making this such an insightful and engaging event. From navigating AI governance and risk to scaling adoption across legal departments, today's sessions have offered real-world strategies, bold ideas, and meaningful discussions that reflect just how fast the legal landscape is evolving. A special thank you again to all of our speakers and panelists for your time, your expertise, and willingness to share your journey. And this is what made this summit so invaluable. For everyone who's joined us live, thank you for your energy, your questions, which were answered live by our wonderful panelists. So thank you for that. And committed to staying ahead of the curve in AI and legal work as we know it. We hope you leave today inspired and feeling better equipped to lead your own AI transformational journey. Stay tuned for a post-event email with the session recording, resources, and ways to continue the conversation. Until next time, this is Kara signing off from the AI Legal Virtual Summit. Thank you so much. Take care and keep innovating. Bye-bye.